booktube! This is Bracky from Bracky Writes, and this is Bracky Reads. It is time for my March wrap-up. Okay, in the month of March, I was able to read 11 books, which is amazing. I was only planning to read about 8, so I read 3 more than my plan. For the most part, I read really stellar books and was pleased. There were a couple that were in the 2-star range, but only a couple, and I definitely had, I think, 2 5 stars, so a great reading month overall. So let's just get started, because there are 11 books to get through. All right, the first 3 books I read in the month of March were part of the Underhyped Reads Readathon. I've already done a wrap-up video that had many reviews for all of those, so instead of giving you a review here, I will link that down in the description box so you can check it out. The first book that I read in March was The Accident Season by Moira Fowley-Doyle. This was a 4.5 star read for me. I really enjoyed this. This is a magical realism book about a family that experiences lots of uncanny accidents in the month of October, and I just really loved this. This is a debut novel from Moira Fowley-Doyle, and I don't know why it's underhyped. I think you all should check it out, and this was just a really great way to start the month. Then I jumped into Shadows Cast by Stars by Knutsson. This is a futuristic dystopian in which the world is ravaged by a plague in which only native peoples can survive and are immune. I wanted to love this, and I have a lot more thoughts in the wrap-up video, but basically this just fell really short for me, and I gave this 2.5 stars. And I finished the Underhyped Reads Readathon with Starglass by Phoebe. I really enjoyed this. This was a 4.5 star read for me. This is a futuristic science fiction novel that follows 16-year-old Tara as she comes of age on a spaceship that has left Earth because Earth was destroyed by asteroids and is heading towards a new planet. This was a really fun book and a great way to wrap up my Underhyped Reads Readathon. The next book that I finished in the month of March was an audiobook, and that is A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bryson. This is like the best book for science noobs like me. This is a great overview of the different science disciplines and a little bit about the science itself, but it's also a history of science. It's a history of how chemistry and paleontology and geology and biology and physics, where all these disciplines came from and how they came to be the disciplines that they are. It also talks about the lives of famous scientists like Isaac Newton, and then ones that I've never heard of like Henry Cavendish. So I really found it an engaging, insightful read. And of course, this has all of Bryson's characteristic trivia and smart, sarcastic quips and comments, and I really enjoyed it. I think I initially gave this 5 stars because it was so engaging, and it was a really great entryway for people who don't really do science like me. But I would say now that I would revise it to a 4.5 star, and that's really just because it is dated. It was published, I think, 2006, 2008, somewhere in there, and because it's dated, some of the science is a little bit off, particularly in physics. I think he still refers to Pluto as a planet, and we all know that Pluto has been relegated and is no longer a planet. If you are like me and you are a science noob, it's a great place to start, and the audiobook is really awesome. All right, I followed A Short History of Nearly Everything with The Lumberjanes, Volume 1, Beware the Kitten Holy. I loved this. This was a 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed this comic book series. I loved the friendships and the feminism and the commentary. It's just really fun. And the artwork is just really fun, and this was just a really great read for me. They're funny. I laughed out loud in public, and I would highly recommend these. My next book of the month was my TBR Jar challenge. That was Into the Dim. I had to read a book that was published in the month that I drew the challenge, so that was a book published that March. Into the Dim was published on March 1st in the United States, so I picked it up. This was another book that I really had high expectations for. Now, I gave this 3 stars, but the more I think about it, I probably would actually revise it down to 2.5 stars. I was giving it 3 stars out of the hopes that the rest of the series will improve, but that's not really a reason to give a book 3 stars. So I think that this was an okay book. It's a time-traveling novel about 16-year-old Hope Watson, whose mother dies in the beginning of the book, and she is sent to live with an aunt in Scotland and discovers that not only is her mother not dead, her family time travels and her mother is stuck in the past, and Hope needs to rescue her. I did a spoiler-free review of Into the Dim, which I will link down in the description in case you're curious about more of my thoughts, especially if you're curious about why I didn't love this. I wanted to love this. I just didn't quite get there. But then I was thinking maybe I'm just being hard on time travel novels. I should probably try another time traveling book. So I picked up Passenger by Alexandra Bracken, and oh my goodness, if the tabs don't give it away, I loved Passenger. I also did a spoiler-free review for Passenger, which I will link down below if you want more of my thoughts. This is the story of 17-year-old Etta. She is a violin protege, and on the evening of a big debut, she is literally thrust into the world of travelers, people who can travel in time, and is sort of forced into a lot of things that she doesn't really know about and doesn't really understand, and kind of has to hold her own, and boy does she. I loved Passenger. It was 4.5 stars for me. This was one of my favorite books I read all month, and it was just really striking to have read this one and then to read this one and to see the time traveling trope done really, really well and really not so well. I loved Passenger, and I think if you're trying to check out some time traveling stuff, I would definitely go for this one. Like I said, 4.5 stars. I loved Passenger. Oh my gosh, loved it. The next book that I finished in the month of March was I Am Malala by Malala Yusefzai. Now, I actually listened to this as an audiobook, and I have to say, I think this is a better audiobook than it would be to read it. This is the memoir of Malala Yusefzai, who is a Pakistani young woman who was shot by the Taliban for advocating for women's rights and for refusing to give up going to school when the Taliban said that women and girls should no longer be educated. Now, Malala has won the Nobel Peace Prize for her advocacy for women and girls' educational rights around the world, not just in Pakistan. And I have to say, there was so much I didn't know. I learned a lot about Pakistani history. I learned a lot about the cultural and sort of economic and current events that led to the Taliban having such an easy time taking root in Pakistan. Now, this is definitely told from her perspective and with her age and background in mind. It's told like someone is telling you a story. This is not high literature, so if you're looking for really high literary memoir, you'll be disappointed. That is why I think this really translates as an audiobook, because she writes the way she would speak to you. She really writes like she's telling you a story, and that worked really, really well as an audiobook. I gave this 4.5 stars. I think anybody who is here on BookTube, who is celebrating the fact that we're all literate and we all have the opportunity to read books and be excited about them, especially those of us who are of the female persuasion, we should read this and remember that this is not a right granted to everyone, and this will get you excited about literacy. It will make you sad for the state of parts of the world and remind you that we have so much farther to go, and I just think that everyone on BookTube should read this. I really do. I loved it, and I gave it 4.5 stars, and yeah, you should go pick it up. It's great. So after I Am Malala, which was wonderful but a little bit heavy, I decided to read Lumberjanes Volume 2, Friendship to the Max. This is the second installment of our Lumberjane comics. This is the comic bind-up of, I think, comics 5 through 8. Again, we continue with the fun artwork and the hilarious plot and the wonderful quips. There's a place in here one of the characters yells, "Holy bell hooks!" and I just was laughing out loud. I was actually reading this one on a train to Oakland, and I was sitting in a public space laughing like out loud in front of people who were all looking at me like I had lost my mind, and didn't even care because this was funny and just full of friendships and feminism and awesomeness, and I gave this 5 stars. Then I picked up a collection of short stories called The Rose and the Beast by Francesca Block. These are really interesting retellings of familiar fairy tales. I want to start by saying the printing in this is weird. Like, that is, look how little page is being used. The environmentalist in me was like, what are you doing, Francesca Block? What are you doing? Francesca Block has an interesting writing style. I read all of the Weetzie Bat books when I was in high school, which is a series of contemporary young adult books that she wrote. And Francesca Block has this very LA postmodern stream of consciousness style that is unique. You will know if you're reading something by Francesca Block. Like, it is unmistakable writing. And when this was good, this was fantastic. The first 2 short stories in this collection read like prose poetry. There are lines in here that just gleam because they are so beautiful. The words just glow off the page. They are so beautiful and perfect and evocative, and I loved them. The rest of the collection felt awkward, and I wanted to love this because I do enjoy Francesca Block's writing, but I was only able to give this 3 stars. Like I said, when it was good, it was 5-star good, but when it was bad, it was like 2-star bad. So I settled on a 3-star review. If you are a Francesca Block devotee, or you really love interesting interpretations of fairy tales, you probably will enjoy this. But but if neither of those things are really high on your list, you might just give this one a skip. All right, and the last and final book I read in the month of March was my favorite book for the month of March, and that is Uprooted by Naomi Novik, and you can tell I liked it because I have tabbed the heck out of this one. I just loved this book. I have a lot of feelings about it. I will be recording a review of this, so when that's posted, I will come back and link it down below. But I loved Uprooted. This is a story of Agnieszka. She is 17 and is chosen to go and be the servant of the dragon, who is the wizard that protects her village. He's not a real dragon, that's just his name. And when she becomes the wizard's servant, she is thrust into a world of political turmoil and the ongoing battle against the evil wood that is enchanted and kind of encroaching every year. I felt like this was a wonderful fairy tale. This is not a direct retelling of any fairy tales, but rather sort of its own story, and I loved that. This was a 5-star read for me. I loved it so much. I consider this one of the most feminist YA novels I have read to date in my life, and I will talk about more of that in the review, but I just think that the way this story comes together, I think the focus on female friendship, I think that Agnieszka being who she is and not just becoming more masculine when she needs to take on a leadership role is wonderful. I do love the dragon and all his prickliness. I just think everything about this is fantastic and inventive and rich, and when it was over, I was sad and was like, why isn't there a sequel or a series or a spin-off? I need something. So this was such a good read. If you are looking for a beautiful, imaginative, immersive world, if you are looking for a story that celebrates femininity and the way that women interact and can solve problems, this book right here. This book right here, you people will love it. I loved it. 5 stars, favorite book of the month. My favorite book of the month. All right, those were the 11 books that I read in the month of March. I now have read 36 books so far this year, which is just so crazy to me. 36 books in 3 months is a record probably for me. What did you guys read this month? What was your favorite book? Uprooted was mine, followed very closely by Passenger. But what were your favorite books of the month? Let me know down below. And if you have read any of these books, I would love to know what you thought of them. If you agreed with me, if you did not agree with me, I would love to know what you think and what you're thinking of these authors and these novels and whether or not you're going to be picking any of them up. Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you soon. Bye!